Hello and welcome to our Express webinar series, Achieving Organizational Agility with ScrumAtScale, a bi-weekly series of short webinars in which experienced ScrumAtScale coaches and trainers share insights into applying the ScrumAtScale framework. My name is Carol McEwen, and as the new CEO and Chief Product Owner at ScrumAtScale LLC, I am excited to be here and be your host for today's webinar. Each webinar in this series will focus on a unique topic of interest regarding ScrumAtScale. Today's topic is scaling the product owner. As a registrant of this webinar series, you will be notified of future events and topics. And you may also find the list of upcoming events at our website, scrumatscale.com/events. Before introducing today's speakers, I'd like to briefly cover a few housekeeping items. First, to provide you the best listening experience, all audio lines except the host and presenter will be muted during the webinar. If you'd like to ask the presenter a question, please use the Q&A panel on your console. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible. And you may use the chat feature to share comments with other webinar attendees, but please be sure to direct all questions to the presenters through the Q&A panel. Please note that we will not be using the raise hand functionality. And these webinars are eligible for half an SEU credit, so you'll need to view 2 Express webinars to claim 1 SEU credit. And finally, this webinar is being recorded and will be available to play on demand from both the ScrumAtScale website and YouTube channel. We're now ready to start today's presentation, and I'd like to introduce our speakers, Dee Rhoda and Q. Dee Rhoda has 20 years as an IT professional and 8 years implementing Scrum and Agile practices. Her experiences transforming teams to Agile for sequential development methods has driven her to work with persistence, optimism, and passion for positive change. She is devoted to assisting others in achieving success. Dee is certified Scrum professional and a 2015 graduate of the Agile Certificate Program from the University of Minnesota College of Continuing Education. And Dee is the second Midwest trainer approved to train ScrumAtScale classes. Dee lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She is married with 2 sons. Dee is an avid golfer, constantly seeking the elusive handicap and little orange ball. And when she is not on the golf course, she enjoys spending time with family and friends over a game of cards. Q has 30 years of experience in multiple industries, including healthcare, financial services, oil and gas, chemicals, government and energy, and 13 years implementing Scrum and Agile practices. Q was trained by and has co-trained with Dr. Jeff Sutherland, the co-founder of Scrum and creator of ScrumAtScale. He has held positions of leadership, including establishing and being responsible for the operation of an overseas subsidiary, as well as led projects in virtualization, product development, Azure, DevOps, Scrum, and ScrumAtScale. And he has delivered cost-effective and innovative solutions throughout his career. Q has lived in many countries and has many interests, and in addition to practicing since the age of 6 and teaching since he was 13, he is a pilot and skydiver and has been a firearms instructor for over 2 decades. So as you can see, you're in good hands today. I'd like to welcome Dee and Q, and thank you for sharing your insights with us today.
Good morning, everybody. One of the things that attracted me to ScrumAtScale initially is the focus on the enterprise and the focus on product ownership. Corporations invest a lot of time and money into crafting the skills of teams and Scrum Masters, but not as much in the product ownership side. So that became a big area of study for me. And ScrumAtScale, it's very good at eliminating waste, reducing the decision latency, eliminating dark work, all those things that people are working on and nobody in the company knows about it because there's poor product ownership, increasing return on investment, decreasing output and increasing the outcome, which is something we always look for. And we always say that if you cannot Scrum, if you don't have your basics done, you shouldn't be scaling. The agenda for today, we focus on 2 topics. One is the organizational structure of product ownership as seen by ScrumAtScale. And the second part will show some examples of product portfolio management, with boards from some of our customers and some statistics of the gains that these customers have by using those techniques. So Dee, it's up to you.
Yeah, thanks, Q, and good morning, everybody from Minneapolis, Minnesota. So we'd like to start out by giving you an overall representation of what scaling the product owner looks like. And that's what this graphic is showing you. And you'll notice that the Scrum teams are graphically represented by pentagon shapes. And this is because, as we have all learned, the ideal Scrum team size is 5 delivery team members with a Scrum Master and a product owner. Represented here is an organization, as an example, of 125 teams, which would be about 625 folks delivering product together. Now, this may look differently in your organization, depending upon the number of teams and team members you have working in Scrum fashion to deliver the products. The titles for scaling product owner, as you can see, are not all that creative, but that's intended so that you can have conversations within your organizations on what each of those titles should be. The key here is to understand the roles and the contribution of those roles to align the organization's vision and strategic priorities. So now let's take a deeper dive into each one of these product owner roles. Q? There we go. Let's start with what I find to be the most important, and that is the Executive Meta Scrum, EMS. And notice that this is represented as a Scrum team as well. The EMS is led by a terminal chief product owner, and the product owner owns the organizational vision for all of the products in that organization. This team generates and refines the enterprise backlog. And the enterprise backlog is a single backlog including all of the items for the organization. For example, initiatives and value streams in that organization. Utilizing many inputs, such as stakeholder and team inputs, marketing and marketing trends, and of course cross-team dependencies, etc., the EMS generates outputs. Outputs such as the strategic vision, business strategy, and continuously doing so by refining that enterprise backlog. Now, the chief product owner, if you recall from the past slide, pulls from this enterprise backlog. When I mentioned, and I want you to be aware of that as we step into the chief product owner role. Thank you, Kim, for moving that along for me. The chief product owner sets priorities for multiple Scrum teams, and they are pulling items from the enterprise backlog and decomposing those items into smaller chunks of work to be done for the products, such as features. This team takes those items and decomposes and refines and sets priorities for those multiple Scrum teams, again, using a single backlog that the chief product owner can use to pull their work from. Now, the chief product owner, Q, thank you. The chief product owner continues to refine and decompose backlog items into features and epics. This backlog also aligns, refines, and sets priorities for multiple teams in the team-level Scrum teams, and generates, again, a single backlog that all the product owners can pull from. Now, I mentioned earlier that the product feedback is bi-directional between different product owner levels. A key event to aid in this type of communication and collaboration is something we call a Meta Scrum. A Meta Scrum is a gathering of key stakeholders, leaders, and product owners. And this event can run in a formal cadence, such as at the end of every sprint or some other time box. But it is led by the chief product owner. And this event is a backlog refinement tool to assist in aligning, planning, and setting priorities for the Scrum teams. Again, if we move to the last of the product owner roles here, it is the product owner. And as we all know, the product owner is someone who sets the priorities for the Scrum team. They work to provide the what is needed to be done, never the how the work is going to be done. Now, I know that that was a very brief overview, but we have a very limited time, so I didn't want to go too deep into any one of these. And of course, as Carol mentioned, these slides will be available to you after our presentation today for you to take a longer look at each level of the product ownership role. So now let's have Q take us through the product portfolio management practices along with a few case study examples. Q?
Thank you, Dee. These are some of the practices that most of my clients use, and you should be familiar with some of them. One is to deliver batches of multiple features for projects and products and not deliver everything at once. The second one is deliver those features continuously over the course of a project or the lifetime of a product. We should focus on achieving near-term business outcomes and not delivering some predefined scope. We should have the teams empowered to do their jobs. And one thing that I'm very fond of is the use of boards to not only track the delivery to the customer or to the market, but also to track what I call the discovery phase, when you sort of have the information, but you didn't refine that information enough to be transferred to the teams. So our first case study, it comes from 3M, HIS, Health Information Systems. And as you can see there, that's the Executive Meta Scrum, where the CEO and senior executives are doing their prioritization sessions. They are pretty much my style. They like physical boards because you can do things with a physical board that you can never do in any tool. And they move things around until they get to a situation where they have this backlog prioritized. And like Dee mentioned before, this will be then distributed to the chief product owners, to the chief product owners, and then eventually will make to the teams. So that's how we'll flow multiple products or multiple projects to that chain of product owners. Here you can see a delivery board is from one of my clients. And you can see things like there is an opportunity queue, there is a ready to do research, there's one doing, there's one ready to groom, there's another one grooming, and then you can follow the whole process through this board at a very high level. I have another example here, another board from another customer where you can see things like we have new ideas, and then we have a column about exploring concept, defining the epics, prioritizing the epics, and so on and so forth. So they're very valuable tools, very simple, very easy to maintain, and very visible. I learned from my many years coaching that C-level executives seldom read PowerPoint slides that you send to them, but I had several CEOs trained to come to the team war room and look at the boards, and they did that quite well and never asked questions. And that's yet another discovery board there. We also have examples here of delivery boards where the whole portfolio, each one of these swim lanes that you see there, it's a product or project, are being used to track progress. And there's another one. As you can see, the columns change from corporation to corporation, how their systems work. And I have a really big one here. This is the view of a CIO from a very large company. And you can see there are multiple projects and products on the board. And this is a full view that was stitched together. They pretty much track everything that's in flight during the several phases until it gets delivered. Now, a very interesting statistic is the same case study for that company who has that massive board. They use boards for delivery and discovery. And the interesting thing is their teams got really good at producing things. And then they had this bottleneck about bringing things to the teams. And they used boards for discovery. They increased the velocity by 64% of what they're feeding the teams with. Because there was always this delay in getting the teams the work to work with. And that's a very common thing. So we recommended the use of discovery boards that increased velocity by 64%. And actually, a side benefit of that we didn't expect was reduction in the expenses by 16% by keeping this constant flow of things going to the teams. As an example, we had a mobile application who went from having the requirements to delivery in 22 days. And this application had, from concept, from the time that somebody had the idea, oh, we should have a mobile app, to actually getting cash back with people buying products and services that through that app in less than 120 days. So I always become a very big fan of boards especially for discovery, because they keep your flow of product very clean, very constant to the teams. So you don't invest a lot of money having really good teams, and then you have no work to come on a timely manner for them. So that concludes our view of the product ownership at scale. And back to Carol for questions and answers.
Great. Thanks so much, Dee and Q, for inspiring us with your insights into scaling the product owner with ScrumAtScale. We'll now take a few minutes to address some of the questions that were received during your talk, and starting with those which were most common across the group. So one question is, how often does the Executive Meta Scrum meet?
So I'll take that one if you don't mind, Q. The Executive Meta Scrum should meet at least once every cadence time box that is set up. A lot of the organizations that I work with, the Executive Meta Scrum gets together at least once a sprint. But some organizations have found that that is a little too often at that level. And so they will get together at the end, if they are using release planning, at the end of every release. But the Meta Scrum, not the Executive Meta Scrum team, but the Meta Scrum as an event, it is recommended meets at the end of every sprint so that they can align backlog items from past sprints and refine the backlog as they move into the next sprint across all teams.
Great, thank you. So next question is, in your opinion, what would you say are the most important factors to consider when scaling the PO role?
I'll take that one, Dee. I think the most important factors for either the PO role or the Scrum Master role is you have to have teams that perform well, understand the 3-5-3s of Scrum. You have to have your foundation properly set up. If you don't have a good foundation, you are not going to be able to linearly scale, which is the premise of ScrumAtScale. So be a PO or be a Scrum Master, you have to have the foundations. Specifically for the PO, it's very common in all the organizations I worked with, at least initially, to have POs, especially at team level, that are not empowered. A lot of them lack experience in the PO role, and that causes a lot of decision delay. It's very common. So I would say you have to start by having product ownership that is properly prepared to execute the function and empowered to make trade-off decisions. That's what normally causes all the delays, and you're gonna see that multiplied exponentially when you scale for any number of teams.
Right, Q, to build on that, that's basically what we were mentioning at the beginning of the presentation today. Your last bullet point was, if you can't Scrum, you can't scale. So get the product ownership role right at the team level before you start scaling.
Great, thank you. Next question. Can you advise some techniques for product discovery?
It would be a bit over the time allocated we have here, but we can cover that either in another webinar, or you can come to one of our coaching sessions, which we have one tomorrow evening. And yeah, there are several techniques. You know, I'm a very fan of the Lean Startup model from Eric Ries. I like to use the boards. I like to use customer interviews. That's something we use quite a bit with a lot of success. I like to have early prototypes as early as possible, even paper prototypes when the software given to the users for feedback as early as possible. So it's a long topic. So we can either have another webinar for this, or we can discuss more on the coaching sessions, or you guys can email me and I'll try to answer as many questions as possible.
Thanks, Q. Let's see, what's the next question? What is the process for communicating strategic insights and priorities from the board through CCPO, CPO, and PO?
Dee?
So I believe the question is aligning strategic vision from the Executive Meta Scrum to team level product ownership. And that can be done through going to the Executive Meta Scrum when they hold their meetings. And again, more importantly, I think it's the use of the event Meta Scrum, where we bring together key stakeholders, product owners, and customers on a regular cadence and confirm or shift the backlogs and the strategic vision of the organization. That's coming together and doing that collaboration and that communication as an event called Meta Scrum. But again, the product owners are getting together in their Meta Scrums as well. The chief product owners are all getting together, for example, and then sending representation up to the chief product owner team, and then again to the Executive Meta Scrum team. That's a way to get bi-directional communication going from team level up to executive and executive down to team level.
If I can add really quickly, I just had a customer right now who had only 6 teams. This is a small implementation. It's a marketing department. They don't do software. And we just had a meeting last week, and their time to delivery was cut by 50% in the last 2 months. They're all novices, but they're doing actually quite well. And they use this structure of the Meta Scrum, this event, to discuss their product ownership. They meet on a daily basis. The meetings are very short. They tend to be 15 minutes or less because they meet daily. And we notice a lot of improvement. And it will improve more as the teams get more experience and the product owners also get more experience.
Fantastic, thank you. What are the biggest obstacles in your view for scaling Agile in an international organization?
I think I can take that one because that's my thing, quote unquote. The biggest problem, don't laugh, is actually time zones. It's very difficult to coordinate things. I worked with a company who had people, at one point we had one project with people in 9 different countries. It was very difficult to coordinate time, but one thing I can tell you is put all the members of one team in one particular country. That makes things easier. I've seen a lot of people having team members that come from different countries in the same team, and that's very counterproductive. I would say have the best video quality communications that you have, and at least once a quarter, we used to fly everybody to the city where we were based at the time, to have everybody physically there, to have better lines of communication, get to know people, create more of this concept of team membership that you don't necessarily get if you only do everything remote. Again, that's a long topic to discuss. Those are my basic things. Make sure people are not in the same team across multiple countries, and they get together periodically, quarterly at least, to have a better understanding of each other. Remember, there's lots of cultural differences that get ironed out really easily in person.
Right. Yeah, Q, the only thing I would add to that, thank you for mentioning culture. We have to recognize culture, but something I've used is something as simple as working agreements. Even though we are across continents, cross countries, let's establish some working agreements on how we're going to work together because we are not sitting face-to-face in a room.
That's very good advice. Working agreements are always really well received, I think. Where, if at all, would a project manager role experienced member factor into the ScrumAtScale structure?
Do you want me to take it, Q, or do you want to go for it?
I think you're better at that one.
Well, please add on after I'm done. But there is no, in my world, there is no role called project manager. But what I would do is take a look at an individual who currently carries that title of project manager and determine what skills that individual has and how those skills might fit into the Scrum framework or the ScrumAtScale framework. I've seen project managers turn into fantastic product owners, or I've seen them also become fantastic Scrum Masters. It's a matter of removing the title, taking a look at the skills, and seeing where they now best fit in this new way of working. Q?
Yeah, to add, you're absolutely right. I think that's one of the things you have to get right at the Scrum level before you even try to scale. the majority of the former PMs I have, some of them went the product owner route. One actually turned out to be a fantastic Scrum Master, is one of the teams I just mentioned a couple minutes ago. So people can do multiple things. The PM role, it was part Scrum Master, part product owner. So they usually go one way or another, depending what the individual prefer to do or is better able to do, is willing to do. It's a very simple transition. It's not as difficult as many people think. And you sometimes end up with people who are really good at one role or the other, and they didn't even know about it.
Great, thank you. So next question is, when doing Scrum at Scale, should the entire organization be running on the same sprint cadence?
I'll take that, Dee, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Absolutely. And
yeah, short answer.
I'll add something else. The whole organization should eventually aim to run as Scrum, as a huge Scrum team or a group of teams, to use the whole structure of Scrum at Scale, which here we're just talking about product ownership, but there's a similar structure for the Scrum Master side. I right now have people in HR and people in marketing doing that. We are expanding to other places and one particular client. I actually training a bunch of more people 2 days from now. And eventually the target is for the whole organization to run as a single Scrum shop. You're going to notice that there are many benefits to this. One of that is to reduce the time that decisions take to be made. There's more transparency. There's elimination of dark work. A few years ago, I was working in a company that I found out that 2 lines of business had different teams working search engine optimization. After we created a Scale Daily Scrum, that went away really quick. The dark work pretty much vanished. So ideally, the whole company should, and that should be in the transformation backlog as a goal for the future.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Q. So the last question, as we wrap this up, which role has program project oversight?
Dee?
Yeah, so depending upon how far you've scaled your organization, the Executive Meta Scrum definitely has a play in the program oversight. So programs, initiatives, and value streams are what the Executive Meta Scrum is focusing on, and providing transparency through the enterprise backlog on those particular products or product. So I would put the program oversight at the Executive Meta Scrum level, but it's not solely rests on them. They're getting, again, that bi-directional feedback and input from the chief product owner, and at the team level as well. And it's circular, right?
Great. Thanks so much, Dee. And with that, we've reached the end of our time box. So I'd like to thank Dee and Q for taking the time to share your insights with us and helping us better understand the scale the product owner role. And I wish to thank everybody that has joined us here today, and just encourage you to go out and check out the ScrumAtScale website and take a look at the classes that all of our trainers have to offer. And also Q had put up there about their the free coaching that is being offered as well. So with that, thank you so much, everybody, and make it a great week.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
for now.